Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website and now an online store. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TWIST. And by Moo, an online print and design company that helps you stand out and make a lasting first impression. Stand out like an IPO-bound idea at a hackathon with premium business cards from Moo.com. Moo creates premium quality, customizable business cards and promotional materials. The range of high-quality cards, top-notch paper, and exclusive design templates make it easy to create a professional business card as memorable as you. For extra wow, try Printfinity, giving you the option to print a different image on every card. Stand out with Moo.com. Today's episode comes to you from Launch Festival 2015. Jason sits down with Scott Painter, American investor and entrepreneur in the technology and automotive industries, also the founder and CEO of TrueCar. Also on the program today, and also from Launch Festival 2015, Jason sits down with Parker Conrad. He is the co-founder of benefits, payroll, and HR outsourcing company Zenefits. Stay tuned.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Okay, keeping the show moving. Scott, sorry I'm running late. But boy, do you represent everything that I hope the conference would be about. What did you think of that?
Congratulations, by the way. This is amazing. I remember when you were talking about this like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and here you are. You've taken over the entire Fort Mason.
It's pretty amazing. Thank you. What did you think of Chris Sacca and Tony Hawk?
Well, I just want to make sure you've got my skateboarding video queued up.
Yes.
Yeah, because there was
pretty embarrassing, in fact. You came to the Launch Festival 4 or 5 years ago and launched this idea called TrueCar.
Yep.
It's a little bit of a crazy idea. What was the original idea?
Well, I think that there's just a different way that we're going to buy cars in the future. And I think that technology plays a big role in that, but I think there's a great role for entrepreneurs and a company like TrueCar to really help solve that problem. And so the mission has always been very simple. It's about a better way to buy a car. Right. Buying a car usually happens when good things are happening in your life. You're getting married, you're getting promoted, you're moving, but yet it's a really high anxiety moment, and it shouldn't be.
And when you launched it on stage, the size of the business was what?
Well, so we had been around for a couple of years before that. We've been operating as a B2B company called Zag, but we launched as TrueCar and came out with our direct-to-consumer brand. Right. At that point, we were probably about a $10 million a year revenue business, and today, 2014, was a little over $200 million.
And you went public?
And we did. We went public in May of this last year.
And we have a video to watch, I believe. Let's play the video for a second here. Yeah.
Cars have always captured our imagination. What they look like, how they move, and the places they take us. And because you've always loved them, you deserve to love the experience of buying them.
Beautiful. So now you're building fancy TV commercials. That wasn't a Super Bowl commercial.
But it did have Owen Wilson, so the voice of Lightning McQueen, and he just joined as really the voice of TrueCar, and obviously appealing to a new generation of car buyers.
Now, we were talking to Tony and to Chris about near-death experiences. This business almost completely imploded, 30 months ago?
Well, so, it's a highly disruptive concept to say you're going to sell cars differently. The business today it's a huge business, first of all. You've got a $550 billion new car market. You've got another $500 billion used car market. So just $1 trillion in that end of the business. But then you've got, financing and leasing. So how you're going to pay for the car. Peace of mind. So extended service agreements, warranties, roadside assistance. You've got insurance, maintenance, repair, refueling. accessories, and ultimately the trade. So you've got, sort of an ecosystem that in some way touches about 20% of the economy. It's highly inefficient, and nobody's been able to really solve it and bring it all together.
And when you started publishing the prices that people were actually paying for cars.
Highly unpopular. So the idea that you can be a first-time car buyer and go in and be an expert in 60 seconds or less is really what TrueCar is about. We use the power of information. Today, we're just a very big data-driven company, a marketplace. We touch about 2 billion different data points every day. Every 24 hours, 2 billion different data points. And really what we're trying to do is bring together an ecosystem. You've got manufacturers, car dealers, and customers, and you're trying to really triangulate all of those and bring them together at the same time. That was a very provocative concept to car dealers. At the time that we got boycotted, which was the end of 2011, we were a profitable business, so we went from being profitable to being very unprofitable very fast.
Overnight.
It was about 60 days. We lost almost a third of all of the car dealers on the program. They just stopped participating on the platform.
Wow.
And
so disruption can hit a wall.
It did, for sure.
And
I think a lot of it is that we were a consumer-driven company. We were focused on solving a problem. People would hear about TrueCar, and they would say, I love it. Dealers must hate you. And that's exactly what happened to us. And I think that, to a large degree, it was my issue. The company was just completely tone deaf when it came to the issues related to dealers. And it turns out that the issues facing car dealers are actually bigger than the problems facing car buyers. Consumers, millennials, believe that car dealers make about 20% profit when they sell a car, and in fact, they make closer to 2%.
And if they knew that, they would actually kind of feel bad for them.
I don't know that they feel bad for them, but I think that there's a moral to the story, which is fundamentally we believe that truth is a more profitable business. And a lack of trust is friction. And in the car business, friction is something that we can measure. It costs money to sell a car because people don't have trust. And when you can introduce trust through objective data, you can lower the cost of selling and you can actually retain more margin. And that's the magic trick.
And most people would make this observation that this is not a trustworthy kind of environment historically. In fact, the used car salesman is kind of the brunt of that joke of sort of dishonesty and this inefficiency. Most entrepreneurs would look at that system and say, why would I ever stick my hand, inside the paper shredder?
Yeah.
You stuck your hand in the paper shredder.
It's interesting. You were talking with Tony and the guys about whether or not they believed as a founder or as an entrepreneur in what they were doing. I've always fundamentally believed that truth is a better way of doing business. I also believe that great companies solve real problems. This is a real problem. I love the car business. I'm a car guy. I'm a data geek. For me, it was the perfect challenge. I understand it. And I'm sort of fatally optimistic enough to believe that we shouldn't have been stopped and that there is a right way to do it. And so even in the face of a boycott and the company almost dying, there was, I think, a real belief among the core group that we were going to make it.
Way to make a website. It's Squarespace. It's elegant. It's beautiful. And it works on mobile. It's flawless. I love Squarespace, and I use it every day. In fact, the launch incubator, the launch fund, the launch festival, every time I have a new aspect or new brand for our company, I say just pop up a Squarespace. Pop up a Squarespace. It's so easy. And you know what? My chief of staff, my Emmy Award-winning producer, anybody on my team, the research team, they can add pages to the site. So when we were doing the launch festival, I was like, hey, put up a page for parties. Hey, put up a page for the chat room. Hey, put up a page for this. Put up a page for that. It was so simple and easy. It was the easiest thing we've ever done using Squarespace. And by the way, it starts at only $8 a month and comes with a free domain if you buy the service for a year, which is, why wouldn't you? It's so affordable. Cover pages allow you to set up one-page presence in minutes. Commerce, every website comes with free commerce. I forgot about that because I don't really sell product. But if you have a friend who has a store, my God, you'll be up and running so quickly and easily. Simple, powerful, and beautiful. Start a free trial with no credit card. That's how confident they are. They don't ask for the credit card. And after a free trial, you can use the promo code TWIST to get 10% off your first purchase. To show your support, go ahead and thank @Squarespace on the Twitter. They're a great company. they keep adding features to this product, and it's super elegant and super awesome. I love Squarespace. I can't say enough nice things about the company because I use it. Super simple. I use it. What more do you need to know? If I use it, then you should use it. It's a great product. It's clean. It's efficient. It's cheap. And your designs are going to look great. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Thank you, Squarespace.
And this true brand, this concept, you chose cars. Could you have chosen another vertical that would be less painful? Like homes? That sounds more painful.
Yeah,
What's a less painful one?
Yeah, I think
Electronics? I don't know.
So cars we understand. Cars I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that it starts with the car as an appliance and that it's fungible, it's mass-produced, it's predictable from one to the next, and yet you can have a very different experience by going from dealer A to dealer B. And in fact, the delta between what one customer pays versus another can go by as much as 30%. So on a $50,000 product, you might be getting $40,000 or close to it, and I might be paying close to $60,000. And that's where all the anxiety comes from. And I think that understanding that and building a brand around the fact that we now have the transaction data, the flat file transaction data that allows us to study that market live and in real time is really the issue. And I grew up on things like Kelley Blue Book and the idea that that is real, it was started by a car dealer in Southern California who really was a market maker who put a price on a car. It wasn't based on transactional data. And I think that knowing that the data is there today and that we can use that as a real market dynamic, we can find that market clearing price. And so we fundamentally believe that that's a great place to start, but True is much bigger than TrueCar. I think that to the extent that you can be a beacon for trust in a really, really murky market like auto, you can not only go into different adjacencies, so True Loan, True Lease, True Quote, True Trade, all the other things related to the automobile.
Yeah.
But you can go geographically, and you can also look at other big categories. I don't know if it's homes or whether it's other big commoditized type things that
Insurance
have
seems like
insurance, anything to do with financial services, anything to do with healthcare. I mean, anywhere where there's opacity, where you would be benefited by greater transparency, I think is sort of the goal.
How would a true healthcare look? I mean, if you could wave a magic wand, change the healthcare space, and get to the finish line of where you are now at True, what would it look like for health?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to succeed at what we're doing, so we need to stay focused.
How close are you on succeeding?
I think we're at really at the early days. I mean, we have 4% market share, 10,000 dealers are on the program, so that's 1 out of every 3 dealers or so in the US. We're seeing over 60,000 transactions originating on the platform every month. But we're a 4% market share company, and there's nobody that does what we do. There's real moats in the business. There's no reason we're not a 30% market share company. So right. I think we've got a long way to go, and we'll take what is today a 300 revenue per customer because we're transactional in nature to probably double or triple that over the coming years.
So back to healthcare for a second. You must think about all these spaces. You've got a lot of work to do on cars.
Yeah.
When you look at those inefficient spaces, let's say we took over the government and you were in charge of the healthcare system, what would you do? Like with your entrepreneurial brain, how would you rework it so that it became somehow efficient?
Step one, I'd privatize it.
You would privatize it?
Yeah. I don't think the government's the right way to go in terms of figuring out how to solve healthcare, number one. I think the first thing that I would do is I would shine a light on the cost structure, and I think what we do at TrueCar is a really good example of we educate people, we empower consumers, we make them more confident, and we make them more satisfiable by giving them data that they never had before. Knowing what everybody else paid for your car is the only way to know what's a fair price. It's not MSRP or invoice. It's not a cost up exercise because every dealer has a different cost structure,
right.
And many dealers are willing to sell cars at a loss. I think the same kind of opacity exists in healthcare, and it really does start by just saying, this is what everyone else is paying, this is what everyone else is getting.
Yeah, we don't even know that. We don't even know what
that would be a great
place. But I think that's part of this new act. When you look entrepreneurially at the arc of your career, you started Cars.com.
Cars Direct. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Cars Direct.
Yep.
Apologies. Cars Direct, now TrueCar. In between there, I might be one of the few people who remember a short-lived project or idea you had, which was custom cars.
Yeah.
Now, did that ever even come public that you were doing it?
Sure. I mean, we raised quite a bit of money.
You did raise money for this idea. I wasn't sure if you had ever raised.
Yeah, so...
Tell us that name of that company and what you did.
It was called Build to Order. And it was
Build to Order.
It was really about understanding that the problems with how cars are sold starts with the fact that we have a build to inventory system, not a build to order system. And in a build to order system, you get to take all of those efficiencies back into manufacturing. And it is literally what Tesla has done from the ground up. It's basically just said, we're not going to build a car until there's demand for it and there's a customer who's placed an order. And that efficiency hits the bottom line for the consumer. And I think that that was really the big idea behind build to order. The industry really needed an external catalyst like an alternative to the internal combustion engine and the electric car to really contemplate reconfiguring how it builds and how it constructs things, and it took somebody like Elon, obviously, to take that kind of a risk.
And the build-to-order concept was I got to pick my actual design of my car.
Well, it was premised on the fact that the auto industry has evolved to a point today where the things that go into the car, the individual things that make a car safe, the components, the modules are being done by a larger degree than ever before by the supply chain. And so the idea that you could have a mass customizable car, you could have a Nike car or an Apple car, and you could have companies like Magna or others be part of that sort of assembly process and outcomes on the other side, or a branded thing. I think more today than ever before, vehicles and car companies are valued based on the value of the brand and the feature set that it represents to the consumer.
What do you think the future of cars is? Because obviously, a lot of discussion about self-driving.
Yeah.
That could change things. Obviously, a lot of discussions about the Ubers of the world, Lyfts of the world, ride sharing.
So I get asked about both. I'm not a huge believer that the autonomous car is the goal. I think that people get caught up in that. I think it's about reducing driver error and the idea that cars will help us to be safer and to park our vehicles without crashing them and to dinging them up and to making the roads safer for everybody. I think that's a great byproduct of an autonomous technology and a focus on that energy or that goal. I don't think that the idea of autonomous cars on the road with non-autonomous cars is really sort of
viable?
I don't know how, if you've got somebody driving a 1973 Ford Bronco down the road, they're going to really deal with an autonomous car. I do think that you're going to have how about this? My 20-year plan doesn't involve autonomous cars, and I don't really think it matters. I think the technology is going to get better and better. I think you'll get in a car, and I think you'll have a very hard time having a car accident. And I think that's a great sort of byproduct of the technology. Is it?
So you could see a world where you get in the car, you fall asleep at the wheel, it takes over.
It takes over, it wakes you up, it keeps you back on the road, but you're still connected. I don't think you're going to be getting in cars and cars are just going to be shuttling you off unless it's in a dense urban area or in a closed area.
And what about this idea that car ownership's going away? Because this has been
I think it's crap. We are at our all-time high in terms of an industry. We're at 17 million units. I think the issue is about affordability. If you can afford the car, you'll buy the car. And I think I don't think you'll drive drunk anymore.
Right.
I think that, if it's convenient, you'll take an Uber to the airport. I think the idea that, the sharing economy means we don't love our cars, I just don't think that's realistic. I think that the car has to remain affordable, and I think that, it's fascinating when you study the new versus the used car market. The used car market has been very hot over the last couple of years because the new car market was constrained for a number of years, and that's the factory that makes used cars. So you've had a shortage of late model used cars, prices have gone up, and that market has been robust, and now new cars are almost more attractive to buy than some used vehicles. And as a result, the market has grown. I think the market's going to continue to grow. I think the way we buy cars is going to change. I think that...
Like Tesla showrooming, do you think that's going to become a model?
I think if you look at TrueCar and what we're doing today, there's two things that keep you between getting another car. One is the process, the high anxiety, high friction moment. I think we're solving that at TrueCar. I think the other is how you pay for the car. I think how much it costs you on a monthly basis, whether or not that's going to take into account the total cost of ownership, whether or not that's easy, whether, it's very hard today to break a lease or to break a loan. So there's a very high friction or high hurdle moment in terms of transactional velocity. We buy cars once every 6 years on the new car side. I think that's going to shorten, and that's going to increase the total number of cars sold. So I don't think we're in for a downturn in that respect, and I don't think that the sharing economy means the end of the new car business at all.
And what do you think of the electric cars? Obviously, Elon's done a hell of a job with that Tesla company there, and now people talking about Apple getting into it. What would the impact of an Apple car on your industry be?
Well, first of all, I think that you would see that coming from a long ways away. It takes, even in sort of Tesla time, 5 to 10 years to get a car to market. So it's not as though we wouldn't be speculating about that for a long time, and they haven't announced they're doing that. I think
so. The quickest they'll get there is in 5 years to have a car on the road.
We're much more focused on the fact that buying a car is such an awful experience, and yet cars are still great. If you go out and buy a new car today, it's a great thing, right? I happen to also be a huge fan of electric cars. I think they're fun to drive. I think they're incredibly remarkable in just terms of the newness of the experience and all the technology.
The way it drives is so different.
It is a fundamental shift, and yet I still love my old cars. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so they do a different thing. They drive a different way, and I think there's room for both. But that market is still teeny and has a long way to go, and such a huge opportunity.
But what do you think of the possibility of the Apple car? I mean, I know you're focused on today, but if this thing arrives in 5 to 10 years, what impact could it have? And do you think they're doing it?
Yeah, so
clearly they're researching it. What's the chances this actually happens?
So stranger things have happened. I don't think that, I think it's a huge undertaking. To do what Elon's done is pretty unlikely and just remarkable. It doesn't matter who you are. The things you have to do aren't money related. And they aren't just design related. Apple would come at it from a very different point of view. It'd be sort of a design exercise down. Elon's very engineering up.
Robots, materials.
Yeah, and I think that it would be cheaper for Apple to buy Tesla than it would be for Apple to figure out how to do it on their own, and they could overpay dramatically and still get a sweet deal.
So the $75 billion Apple purchase of Tesla.
But yeah.
You think it would be even more?
Why not? I mean, at the end of the day, if they're really going to get into that, they're going to be in for a lot more. So it really,
it'll cost them more to do it themselves.
Here's what I believe, just as a consumer.
Yeah, tell me
as a consumer, I think that the things that Apple represents from a design point of view are remarkable, and I think they're part of a feature or functionality of a car. But a car is something you get in. It's something very different. And you put your family in it. And, it's just, I think it's a very big leap to say that Apple's just going to take that success in tech and design and make the jump into cars. I think it's much, much higher of a hurdle than people think.
All right, let's hear it for Scott Painter of TrueCar. Very well done. Awesome.
Thank you.
That was great.
Hey everybody, let me tell you about one of my favorite products. It's Moo. Yes, Moo is a great way to make beautiful business card designs, super, super easy, and they're beautiful, thick, and they're full of small little details that will help you stand out. Mini cards, triple thick Lux cards, and the latest edition, the letterpress. It's a full line of business stationery and promotional material that you're going to love, tons of variety, and all the products will help you break through, start conversations, and look brilliant. Printfinity gives you the ability to print a different image on text on every card, which is really clever. You can do different things with different cards, and it turns ordinary into epic. Yes, exclusive only to Moo, where you can get this variety of cards from one order. And the design is really easy to do from an extensive group of templates that are provided at no additional charge. That's right, you don't have to pay a designer a bucket-load of money to have incredibly well-designed cards anymore. And you can also upload your own masterpiece, of course, if you insist. And the stock is rich, thick, and lovely. You can really feel the difference, when you are touching a Moo car. So go ahead and visit moo.com for more details. It is a great company, and I've been using their products for literally a decade. I mean, back to the Weblogs Inc. days, we would give bloggers Moo cards because they loved them so much. It's a great reward for all of your constituents to get them those business cards. It makes people feel proud, and you want people feeling proud about your company and your mission. So go ahead and go visit moo.com and thank @Moo on Twitter, and follow them on Twitter and thank them for their awesome support of This Week in Startups. Okay, let's get back to the program.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Parker Conrad from Zenefits.
Hey.
And the reason I wanted you to come was twofold. One, I'm very interested in these new unicorns. We've got a couple of them going around town. Everybody keeps saying, hey, this is the next one. This company is growing faster than any other company. And the second is my very close friend, David Sachs, who is an LP in the Launch Fund and who won the Launch Festival a couple years ago. Instead of starting his own company, decided to join yours, which is quite a coup.
Yeah, it's really great to have someone like David on board who, and someone who really does actually know what they're doing with all this stuff.
So tell everybody, what is Zenefits? How did it get started, and where are you guys at? Because the scale is pretty amazing and/or frightening, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So basically, Zenefits got started. At my last company, we were always too cheap and sort of running out of money, and so we never hired anyone in HR. And so my co-founder and I were dealing with a lot of the pain points around, having a small company ourselves. And we spent a couple hours a month doing things like getting people set up in payroll and enrolled in health insurance and that sort of thing. And it was a couple hours that I deeply resented. And I always thought that, gosh, the problem is you have like 20 different systems that your employees need to be set up in. A lot of different HR stuff. And like if everything was online and it was all connected up and you had one central place that you could go to and that employees could go to make changes, it would save everybody a lot of time. And that's essentially what Zenefits is.
And you guys provide healthcare and payroll, or I think you do payroll through a partnership.
So most of the time we're connecting to other systems. So we're not an insurance company, but we manage sort of Blue Cross or United or one of those carriers.
Yeah.
Or same thing with payroll. We don't do payroll ourselves, but we connect to a lot of different payroll companies and sort of set you up with them and manage them on your behalf.
And previously the way you would do this is with a PEO, personal employer organization, if I was correct. And I had all my companies on that. I switched to Zenefits last year, or at the start of the year. And that $120 or $130 a month they were charging me per employee went away.
That's great.
And so we wound up saving like $15,000 or $20,000, maybe $20,000 per company. How are you able to do that? How do you guys make money? Because the insurance cost was the same. So we used to use those PEOs to get the group insurance. It wound up being the same, in some cases a little bit less, in some cases slightly more, but not a lot. And then that, whatever, $1,500 a year I was paying went away. How do you make money if I'm not paying you anything?
So we make money basically, in a bunch of different ways, but the biggest source of revenue that we have is as a broker on your insurance policies. And so, brokers get paid by the carriers, and those rates are built in structurally into the system, so it really doesn't change your pricing. We do a lot of we have built a lot of technology around connecting up these systems so that there's sort of less paper pushing on our end, which makes it a little more efficient. And that lets us, do pretty well on sort of just, the insurance commissions and several other sort of kind of similar revenue streams.
Now, what's the scale of the company now? There's hundreds of employees and thousands of customers, just broad strokes. How big is this company now? Because you started 18 months ago or 36 months ago?
Yeah, a little less than 2 years ago.
A little less than 2 years.
Yeah, they're about 800 employees.
Whoa.
Right now.
You have a 2-year-old company with 800 employees.
Yeah.
So you've hired more than one person per day since the inception of the company, but I'm guessing the majority of them came in the last year.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're maybe 2 people per day this year.
We're hiring right now about 100 people a month.
100 people a month. How does one do that in any systematic, way?
So we hired a guy named Mike Leary who used to run recruiting for SAP, and he's come on board and has really sort of embraced that whole project and is trying to help us scale the team really quickly.
So how many companies, broad strokes, how many people now are using Zenefits?
I think it's roughly about 10,000 companies, a little more than that now.
Huh. And I'm assuming those companies each have a dozen or 24 people. You do SMBs, right?
Yeah, we kind of go, our sweet spot is sort of 5 to 500 employees.
Gotcha. But wouldn't you, when you get to 100, want to have like a dedicated human resources person?
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing, is what you ideally probably want is you want someone in HR at that point who's really strategic, who can be like an advisor to the company about who you hire, who you promote, how you think about performance, that sort of thing. And it's sort of anachronistic that there's this kind of administrative paper pushing role in the HR departments in most companies. If you had, if there was something like Zenefits, if there were systems and technology that made sense here, that would have never been a part of what HR does. And so I think what happens with Zenefits is people might hire HR a little later in the company life cycle, but when they do hire someone, it's someone who's like, really a real advisor to the business on this stuff.
And if you're growing this fast, why hasn't this business existed before? I mean, it's like when these unicorns happen and they pop, it's everybody like, why didn't somebody think of this before? Had this existed before, or just nobody thought to marry a SaaS platform with the insurance broker function?
Well, there's a lot of complexity around the insurance side, and I think no one's really kind of given a real bear hug to that part of the business before, and so one of the pieces of advice that people give startups that I think is like wrong in our case is to focus and do like one thing. And what happens is when companies in our space, because a lot of companies have focused on like one spoke in this hub and spokes ecosystem, then all of these other companies out there end up with 20 different systems. One system for payroll, one system for insurance, one system for 401ks, one system for time and attendance and performance management and all these different things. And so now
time management,
exactly,
invoicing.
Now you need sort of a company that sort of ties everything together and gives you sort of one place that sort of unifies everything.
Makes you sort of the Salesforce of employment.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting analogy for our business.
Recently raised, I don't know how much from Andreessen Horowitz.
So we raised about $66 million, actually about a year ago.
A year ago?
Yeah.
And the company then was valued at $500 million, I read in the press. That means it's got to be worth $1 billion now.
I don't know.
It's going to be another month.
That sounds really cool. I don't know.
Is there another big raise coming to fuel this growth?
We'll see. I mean, I think at a certain point we'll probably go out and raise money again, but nothing that's like underway or anything like that.
One of the big topics is of this event with a lot of the investors has been the valuations of these companies, how fast they're growing, and just sort of are we in a bubble or not? You would be the poster child of the fast growth company and soon to be unicorn or perhaps unicorn. How are you managing that valuation and all this attention you're getting from investors, literally knocking your door down, I'm sure, with actually operating the business? Because this business is hard and complex.
Yeah. So the truth is I spend like, 99% of my day on the second part of that, sitting there worrying about, if there's an issue with a customer, making sure that we're addressing it, what do we need to like fix in our process or build to sort of avoid, if we made a mistake, never make sure that we never make that mistake again. That's like all of these sort of like, much less sexy parts of like scaling a business is where I spend all my time, and I don't spend very much time at all thinking about fundraising until at a certain point I expect that, we'll be into fundraising, hardcore for, a couple weeks or something, and then obviously that occupies all your attention.
This space and SaaS, you talk about this hub and spoke model. Is that what the world wants as a hub and spoke, or do they just want to buy the wheel from one person? Because it seems pretty annoying to me to have 7 or 10 or 20 vendors for my, HR sort of group. Even if they are best of breed, do you think it's going to be a hub and spoke and then eventually a wheel?
That's a really interesting question. I think there are many, many different sort of systems that have a nexus with the employee record. I think there are so many that it's impossible for one company to really do all of them. And so I think it really does make sense for there to be a hub and spoke model for all these different systems that you need to set people up in, whether it's like email or other IT systems or all the different HR systems or all these other different things. Ideally you'd have one place and you'd say, I have a new employee. Here's their name, here's their personal email address, here's who they report to and how much money they make, go. And then you'd have a system like Zenefits that would just take care of everything. It would handle all the compliance, it would deal with all the paperwork, it would get them up and running, with payroll and benefits, but with everything else as well.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the vision of it. And like I don't think you can actually do like everything, but I think you can take on, maybe some of the really core systems that there aren't great solutions for in the marketplace and do them really well.
Sort of like when you buy a phone, like you kind of expect it has a browser, an email client, and
Right,
messaging.
exactly.
But maybe
But
mapping.
there's a lot of other stuff as well.
Yeah, interesting. And so bringing David Sachs on, let's tell that story a little bit. How did that occur? Because we were all watching it, his friends and other people in the industry, and like, hey, he built a unicorn. He could easily build, well, not easily, but you'd think maybe he's going to try to build another one or maybe join. He was being recruited pretty hard, all the late stage funds. That's an easy way to make money, and what a great life that is compared to entrepreneurs. Like just sit around and write checks. How did you land David Sachs as your COO?
So I wish I could take like a lot of credit for this, but actually, it's one of the great things about having a great investor like Andreessen Horowitz is I felt like it was sort of handed to me on a silver platter, that they had been talking with David and he was sort of interested in maybe joining a company, and I think Lars and Mark spoke with him extensively. And then when I met with David, and he and I talked, but it was a little bit of a layup for me, and I think he was really excited about the business. I was thrilled to have him on board to help with all this stuff.
What's that like to be the boss of the guy who just sold his company for $1 billion plus to Microsoft? I mean, you're more partners than his boss.
Yeah, that's the way I think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, growing a company, I think for any CEO, even when things are going really well, is just like overwhelming and scary on the best of days. And so,
what's it like on the worst of days?
In the worst of days, it's like that plus like deeply depressing at the same time.
You've had some pretty rough days over there.
Yeah, we've had rough days.
What's the worst?
But luckily, we've had the good days. What's the expression, like the arc is really long, but it sort of bends in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I feel about doing a startup that's growing really quickly.
And then having David with you makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it's great because there are parts of the organization that I can carve out and say, okay, David's going to run with them, and he's doing a great job with all that, and then that leaves me time to sort of focus on other areas.
Yeah, I mean, the only bummer about this is like every time I'm like, hey, David, let's get a drink or play cards, he's at work. And he's like, I need 2 more hours. I got to get more. He's really engaged, and he really believes in what you guys are doing. He believes this is going to be a $20 billion, $100 billion super unicorn.
I hope so. Yeah, I think we're in a position where that's maybe a possibility. I would never say that's like a probability. But I think there's a path towards building a really big company with what we're doing.
The healthcare space is a real pain in the ass to actually tackle. How much of your life is just trying to get through all these regulations and insanity?
Well, there's a lot of it. One of the problems we run into is that the insurance companies, operate with technology that's sort of like based in 1986, and they're working through a community of independent insurance agents, who are, mom and pop shops around the country with no technology. A lot of them barely know how to use email. And what's happening, the really nice thing about what we're doing, the good news for us is that we're actually forcing a lot of the insurance companies to build really good technology systems to integrate with us. And so we're working with the 25 largest carriers right now in the United States to actually build electronic integration points for us so that there isn't a lot of like paperwork and back and forth, which is how a lot of this works today. And so that becomes a way to just make things a lot easier for us, but also for our clients, make it a lot smoother. And so that's sort of like the thing that's like really, from a boring back-end operations perspective about our business, that's sort of exciting right now.
Well, I switched both of my companies over to it, and the 2 companies, which have about 10 or 15 employees each, we saved about $15,000, $20,000 a year. So thankful for that. The onboarding was a little rough at times because we have so many people in different cities. There's so many documents to do. But I went in the interface myself. It's getting very tight. You're able to like get through it in a couple of clicks. So it's like all this paperwork you normally had to do is now in one place at the very least. And it feels like it gets a little bit 10% faster every time somebody goes through it.
Yeah, our biggest challenge is always like, getting new clients set up. It's always sort of like the roughest period with them because there's so much stuff we need to do to connect up the insurance side of it.
Yeah.
And once they kind of get through that point, it's really easy because hiring someone, it's just you click hire, you tell us 5 things about them, you click go, and like everything's handled from there.
I am a super fan of the product. You guys are not a sponsor or anything, just so people are clear. Like I'm just a super fan of the product. David, convinced me like, wow, check this out, and it's really amazing how awesome it is, and it saves so much time. So I think for startups, it's a no-brainer to just save all this money.
It's a great way to get up and running with this stuff.
It's so fast, and you're like all of a sudden got employees. So come back next year. 800 employees now, 10,000 clients. Let's see where you are next year.
Yeah.
All right,
Jason,
Parker.
thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming.
Great to meet you.
Appreciate it.